Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Well, good morning, my friends. Welcome to the program, the Monday edition of the Michael Dukes Show, broadcasting around the world at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator, and, of course, the internet at michaeldukeshow.com. We've got, sorry, I'm a little discombobulated this morning. I was had some technical issues on the stations. I was babysitting until about 1 o'clock this morning, and so just trying to get everything squared away. And we got a bang up show for you today. We're excited. It's the first Montalbano Monday of the year. Yeah, I mean, this has got to be a more regular thing. We're going to be joined in just a hot second by Sarah Montalbano, who is used to be our expert on education when she was with the Alaska Policy Forum, and then energy with the American Experiment, and now she made another change. She's moving on up. I mean, she's just all over the place. So she's going to tell us all about that here in just a moment, and we're going to talk about some stuff, including high rates of electricity around the country. From mostly blue states, plus the Alaska LNG. What are all the new things mean that we're hearing about with AKLNG? She's given it a little thought. She's going to give us some thoughts on that here in just a minute. In hour 2 of the program, we're going to talk about the potential creation of a new state forest down here on the southern peninsula. It kind of came out of the blue, and people are a little concerned about it. And especially folks who recreate through snow machining up in a lot of the hills and areas around the South Central area. So we're going to be talking with Dave Mastolier from Snomads, which is a snow machining organization down here on the Southern Peninsula. We're going to talk with him about the proposed forest and everything else, and see if we can get some details on it and what they're concerned about. That's going to be coming up in hour 2 this morning. Other than that, a quick look at some weather. Looking like it's going to be 40 below in Fairbanks, 40 below up in Fairbanks here this week. They got a bunch of snow this weekend, about 7 inches of snow, and we're 7 to 10 inches, I guess, depending on where you're at. And then it's going to clear up. It was got a lot warmer, but again, overnight lows are going to return to 40 below this week up in the Fairbanks area. Anchorage saw a bunch of snow. It's going to cool off again into 10 to 15 degrees, up to 10 degrees below zero, but single digits this week. Down in the Southern Peninsula, pretty nice and warm. So we're not we're doing okay right now. But yeah, this weather just keeps flipping back and forth. It's like nobody can decide what it wants to do. So we'll see what happens there. All right. Well, let's without further ado, let's jump into this with our good friend Sarah Montalbano and see what this all the hubbub is about. She joins us this morning right now. Good morning and Happy New Year to you there, young lady. How you doing?
Doing well. Happy New Year to you.
Did you have a good holiday? Did you take any time off? You got a little time off because you were between jobs.
I was briefly unemployed, so I took that time off and went up, saw my folks for the holidays. It wasn't nearly as cold as it is now, but I got as much as I needed.
That's right. You got just a taste of it, right? That's all you needed was just to get a little bit of it, and now you're like, okay, I'm back. I got
Yeah.
back to the world. Well, so big news. Obviously, I guess we should start off with that since we just spilled the beans there. Briefly unemployed, you were with the American experiment, and now you've moved on to something brighter and shinier, and we call that brightier around here. What? So give us the good news here, Sarah M. What's happening with you?
Yeah, it's been an exciting month or so. I've joined Always On Energy Research, which is a nonprofit 501c3 modeling firm, and it's dedicated to ensuring that every state in America has affordable, reliable energy and can have a robust, rapidly growing economy. So I'm the energy policy analyst there now. It's a really small team, so there's only a couple other people, all of whom I would consider a good friend. And there's lots to do. I have a lot of variety. I get to do some interesting things here. So we're kicking off this week 3 with the Montalbano Monday, and it's exciting to be here. Get to share the good news.
Yeah, well, that it is. It's awesome. So, well, I don't know exactly. Can you give us a little bit of background about what your organization does? It's a nonprofit, but it's a modeling agency. Tell us, it's not the modeling agency you were thinking of. What does it mean exactly? What is it? Talk to us like we're 5 here and tell us exactly what you do over there.
Yeah, it's great because this group of folks have developed a model to basically understand the true costs of renewable energy policies, and a variety of think tanks and agencies will reach out to us and have us actually get some realistic cost estimates on some of this stuff. So they've done a lot of really cool work over the last couple of years. This report that I'm ready to talk to you about is, I think, a really, really great one that kind of bridges the gap between what policymakers might understand about things, about energy policy, which is a complicated field, and what the actual true costs are, and what the media says about energy policy. There's a lot there's a lot of misinformation out there, and we just want to present the data as best we can.
I mean, there's a lot of aspirational stuff and virtue signaling when it comes to this kind of stuff in policy making, in politics. And we see a lot of this. Oh, we'd really like to do this. We'd really like to do that, whether it's be 100% renewable or whatever. But there's, again, the cost of this is what gets us. The things that we don't understand is that not only is there an upfront cost, and usually it's a super heavy lift in the upfront cost, but there's ramifications as far as grid stability and other things as you go down beyond that, right? I mean, you talked about this in your report, the Shattered Green Dreams, which I recommend that if anybody hasn't gone and read that report that Sarah was part of, Shattered Green Dreams, it talks a lot about that and the costs involved in that. I mean, this is kind of what we're diving down into, right, Sarah?
Yes, absolutely. This is kind of just the continuation of my thinking on this. Seemed a really natural place to go for the economic and reliability modeling too, because what our group does is we can build out this portfolio and say, okay, if you were able to get your renewables by 2040, 100%, what would the grid reliability actually look like, and what kind of hour by hour failures would you have, and what would be the cost of that? And a lot of states, they've modeled in Minnesota the impact of their 2040 mandate, and it's something like $363 billion more for this grid to get there by 2040, and there'd be a 40-something hour blackout in January, February of 2042, which is a huge problem. This is not something that people can really withstand. So that's just kind of an example of the things we do. And there's lots of cool projects that come out, and I'm excited. I get to do some computers programming. I get to do some op-ed writing. Just a lot of good variety for me to best support reliable and affordable electricity.
All right. Well, before we're going to hold up on the AKLNG stuff till the end of the hour, but let's launch it off here. You sent me as a discussion starter this report from the Institute for Energy Research called "Blue States High Rates," and it's a fascinating look at how the philosophies of policy and politics in red versus blue states. It's an interesting look at how different states approach it, and how those translate into exorbitant costs for some of the residents there. So let's get started on that.
That's probably the best summary of this report. I think it's a fascinating approach here because obviously voters have recognized that their electricity bills are going up. I want to say 73% or so of U.S. residents are concerned about them. They often feel powerless over how much they're paying for this. And so this report with Always On Energy Research and the Institute for Energy Research, we found out that 86% of states with electricity prices above the national average in the continental U.S., so exclude Alaska and Hawaii, those are the blue states. Those are entirely 86% above the national average are blue states, and voted for the Democratic nominee in 2020 and 2024. And 80% of the 10 lowest states with the lowest electricity prices are reliably red states, having voted for the Republican in those elections. So it's really amazing to me, the sorting that is so clear once you've color coded them and look at them over time. And of course, correlation isn't causation, but there's a lot to be said for the state policies here. There's so many impacts. And then the rest of the paper kind of discusses a couple of case studies from New York, California on the blue state side, and Florida, Louisiana, and Kentucky on the red state side of things. And I pulled a couple of Alaska data points because I think Alaska is a really interesting case here.
Well, yeah, because I don't even know what we are these days. Purple. Blue, purple leading blue, red leading purple. I don't know. It's but of course we're the outlier, right? I mean, one of the most interesting things that I saw in the report was, of course, that the first chart where it shows the state electricity prices versus the U.S. average, and Alaska is right up there in the top, right? I mean, 30. Yeah. I think I'm paying 29 cents a kilowatt hour or something, or it's significant. It's a big chunk of money, but there are places in Alaska where they're paying 36, 38 cents a kilowatt hour. And so it definitely is an interesting thing. And I don't know, I think we may fall outside the political branded here, but walk us through the policies and the discussions and why this makes, actually give us a quick thumbnail of it, and then we'll come to break and we'll get back into the deep dive there.
Sure thing. Yeah, California and New York are obviously states that have fully embraced this renewable portfolio standard stuff. They've got net metering with their solar. They're pushed for all of this stuff. And not only that, but New York's also closed one of their nuclear plants as of 2021. So they're clearly suffering the consequences of their actions here. All of the blue states that are highlighted in this case study have really leaned into their advantages, but they've also just avoided making some of these mistakes.
Well, it's going to be interesting to dive down into it and dissect it. Sarah Montalbano is our guest. We continue with Montalbano Monday here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We will continue in just a moment, and we'll be back right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we are in the break with Sarah Montalbano here, our guest. Though I'll tell you, Sarah, one of the things that really stuck out to me when I first was reading this report and I was looking at it is that this first statement in the first couple paragraphs of the report, talking about the affordability of energy across the country. and talking about federal data showing U.S. electricity prices increased 27% from January of 21 to January of 25, and then went up an additional 11% from January through September of last year. That's, I mean, a 38% increase in 5 years. That's not a sustainable rise. I mean, when you look at that, that's crazy.
Absolutely. Voters are mad, and by all rights they should be. And so much of this growth has been under the Biden administration, and I think we're really just seeing the lagging effects of these kind of policies. And so much of this, again, I think the report explains it pretty well, is at the state level. There's a lot of state legislative choices here that are finally coming home to roost. And so I'm amazed. It's really crazy. And I think all of this, it's hard to believe too, with reports coming out that, inflation's only 3%. Well, not in this sector. This seems to be a pretty amazing skyrocketing here for energy policies and energy prices.
No, and it's interesting to see how those policies again go in and affect the long term. You and I have talked about the long term stability, right, of the energy grid. It's not just so much the cost, whereas because maybe if it was better, maybe the cost would be worth it. But the fact that the stability and dependability and deliverability of these grids is much less than with all these renewable choices and everything else. It's the reliability is just not there.
Absolutely. It's a scary thing, I think, especially when we've seen problems like 2021's Winter Storm Uri in Texas that killed more than 200 people due to a blackout. And so much of this is preventable. And we're stacking the intermittent renewables when we really need more dispatchable generation. And that's before we even talk about things like data centers and AI and all of the states that are going to get a lot of this investment and need more electricity to supply them. It's astounding. It really is.
No, and when we get into New York, you'll see Harold is popping off with a bunch of stuff. The supply of energy far outpaces the demand, thus the lower prices. That's not what's happening. That's not what happened. It's not what's happening right now, Harold. And so-called red states have lower standards of living and lower school scores, and less healthy. And Florida has got one of the highest standard of living in the country. And yet it has well below the average of electricity cost as well. So, I mean, I think from a policy standpoint, that's where I found this to be fascinating, because this was all about the philosophy of the people involved making those decisions.
Yeah, and Florida in particular has had a long stretch of Republican control, and what we talk about in this report, and we can talk more when we get there, is even despite things like hurricanes that are requiring ongoing investment, Florida's still below average, and it manages to do that because it's seized on natural gas. It's really gone heavy into the hydraulic fracturing revolution after that, and has increased the proportion of natural gas on its grid, and that's not a bad thing. And I'll be happy to talk some more about that too. Right. It's important for the reliability, and having living here, it's a pretty good place to live.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to see. And no, Harold, I did not say that prices are not a factor of supply and demand. That's not what I said. But you hear you. That's what you gotta go on. All right, 15 seconds out. We're getting ready to rejoin the radio and continue on with Sarah Montalbano, our guest here on the Michael Duke Show, Florida. Oof, man, I don't know if I want to live there. It's nice and warm, but so wet. All right, here we go. Jumping back into it. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay, we're continuing now. Sarah Montalbano is our guest, and we were just talking about, again, this new report that came out last month from the Institute for Energy Research from Thomas Pyle, Kenny Stein, Alexander Stevens, titled Blue States High Rates. That's the title if you want to go look it up and look up this study. I posted links in the chat room. A very interesting piece, and I was just telling Sarah that, to me, the most, when I looked at it, the most jaw-dropping thing right off the gate was they said that electricity prices, according to federal data, have increased 27%. From January of 21 to January of 25, they increased 27%. But from January through September of last year alone, they went up an additional 11%. So 38% increase in just 5 years. And that's that's concerning because, again, as you said, that's a big thing that Americans are concerned about. And it's not like you can only reduce your electricity consumption so much. It's not like you can stop eating out and doing all these other things. You can control your own budget, but you got to have X amount of electricity to do what you need to do. Right. And this is a crazy, crazy thing.
Yeah, energy is human flourishing, and I think there's only so much you can do to cut down on your energy use without actually impacting your standard of living. And that's the problem I tend to have with the kind of energy efficiency people is, yes, maybe that's a good thing, but we don't need to cut back on our electricity use. What we need is for energy to be cheaper and more abundant, so that these prices don't have to get so high. And 80% of Americans feel powerless over how much they're charged for their utilities. This is something that is hitting everyone everywhere, and we saw it last November with many of these super midterm elections in New Jersey. The Democratic governor elect was selected in part because she was focusing on energy affordability. And not to say that I think her solutions will work, but there's a lot of discontent about it, and it's really important. I think, again, the 2021 through 2025 January statistic, all of that was happening under the Biden administration, and a lot of it is just hangover from these policies and what a lot of states have been doing, because states have most of the control over their grids and what rates are being charged there.
The policies that we're talking about, how they shape electricity and how they shape their rates. Let's get into that. Again, you were just talking about the Biden administration. We've got the Federal Power Act, which these expansive state powers that regulate electricity generation, and they get to decide generational portfolios, which I'm not against per se, but at the same time, there's been a lot of this. There's been a lot of these decisions going on that have a tremendous cost, including for clean energy and green energy, et cetera. So walk us through that.
Yeah, I think the perfect place to start is with New York, because they're in the Northeast. A lot of the Northeast, if you look at this map, is in this higher than average group. And that's mostly because they're refusing to expand existing natural gas pipelines. So what they seem to really struggle with is getting a lot more of that natural gas in there. And then again, an issue that matters a lot for Alaska is the Jones Act, right? Like we're not able to import on a ship that isn't U.S. flagged and constructed without stopping at these intermediate ports, and that affects the Northeast too. They aren't able, without pipelines, they cannot actually get all of the natural gas they need. Again, New York has a really strict law passed in 2019, their Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. That requires 70% of their electricity to be produced from renewable sources by 2030, which I don't know if you've looked at the calendar recently, but that's only 4 years away, and they're not really close. And then 100% by 2040. And so Governor Hochul's actually tried to kind of walk back some of this stuff. She's refused to implement a part of that act that was going to essentially, I believe, impose some like tax issues and carbon credits and such. I've forgotten the details of that, but she said no. And the very environmental eco left is suing to force them to implement this problem that she has said in statements that she knows is going to be tremendously expensive. That was part of their defense, is we can't do this because it's going to be tremendously expensive.
Right.
So I think that's straight from the horse's mouth. Democrats understand this in these states. They're just coming, the consequences of these policies are coming to roost now that we've reached a certain penetration of renewables on the grid. Those are starting to make things way expensive, and you have to overbuild your firm dispatchable capacity. You have to overbuild your wind and solar because the wind is not always blowing and the sun is not always shining. So
right.
This is a physics problem we're tackling right here.
Well, right. And New York, and they mentioned this in the report, but New York's electricity prices are 58% higher than the national average, and 62% higher than Florida's. Yes. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they're not doing fracking. They're not using natural gas. And like you said, Hochul, she actually delayed implementing the state's tax mandates from that 2019 law. And her quote was, because they would impose, quote, extraordinary and damaging costs upon New Yorkers, and that the regulations would be infeasible. Now, I mean, ironic that here's a Democratic governor taking a stand like this, but even she understands that you couldn't do this. This would be a stake in the heart of the economy of New York.
Absolutely. And we've seen, similar statements, not quite so strong from Governor Newsom in California. I think he's trending towards the middle, in part in hopes of a presidential bid. And he's even allowed more drilling rigs in California recently, even though, he's off going to the climate conferences that the UN is holding. He's at the same time allowing some of this in California. They've delayed a refinery tax that was going to punish excessive profits for refiners for, I think, 5 or 10 years, which is a pretty astounding thing. So they recognize that these things are making electricity and gasoline more expensive. California has the second highest rates in the nation on our report, double the national average. And they've really gone hard for renewables, and they only have 39% of their grid is non-hydroelectric renewables, and they've already outpaced the rest of the United States for rates. So those are kind of the blue states that we wanted to focus on, because they are an astounding example of this kind of policy, and where it goes, where it's wholeheartedly implemented, things get incredibly expensive incredibly quickly.
Right. And of course, the thing that we talked about earlier was the potential for nuclear. But New York and California have both steered clear of that. New York shut down their one. They shut down that one nuclear reactor in 2021, 2020, something like that.
Yeah.
And California only gets 7% of their whole power from nuclear, and only 12% from hydroelectric, which shocks me, because again, there's a potential there for that cheap, affordable power. Somebody, Brian in the chat room, posted earlier. He was talking about the average in Alaska was 26 cents a kilowatt hour on average, but Juneau is down around 7 cents, and that has to do with the hydro project that's outside of Juneau. So I mean, why aren't we focusing on these more? Why is it just because of the sexy factor of being, I guess, virtue signaling on the renewables?
I think that's so much of it, and I think nuclear in particular is not sexy to a large part of the really strong environmental left, for completely, I think, illegitimate reasons at this point. I think nuclear has been proven to be very safe, and it's the only way we can get dispatchable power from this in a zero carbon way. So I think the people who are concerned about emissions and all of this, nuclear is the answer to that, and we need to be supporting that. And New York certainly hasn't. California is not particularly good about this either. And the three states that we look at, Florida, Kentucky, and Louisiana, all of these states have doubled down on natural gas and coal. And that is for a good reason. It's because they're very energy dense. Natural gas has half the emissions of coal, but coal can be stored on site. And they have these natural resource blessings that they've simply decided to keep going with. And so I think that's a huge part of it. And we should expand our natural gas capacity in our electric generation up until such time as nuclear is really making sense for states. And I think that time might be now, really.
And it's interesting to note that Florida, which utilizes a huge percent, 75% of its power is generated from natural gas, yet they have no significant natural gas production of their own. They have to import the majority of it, and yet still they're well below the national average on this, even with the consumption. What did they say? How many? Was it 54%? 54% of the state's total electricity consumption comes from homes because, of course, air conditioning and the heating and the whole thing. I mean, it's kind of crazy, but they've done it even though they had to import it.
Absolutely. And that's despite, a lot of infrastructure rebuilding. They're the second largest producer of electricity in the US. Florida is only behind Texas. And again, the largest residential share of the grid is in Florida. So, but they're still 2% below the US average. They're only paying 13 cents per kilowatt hour. Which is pretty astounding. So they really seized on the shale revolution and they doubled down on importing this natural gas, and it's honestly going pretty well. They have a very affordable grid for most people, and the same thing with Louisiana too. Louisiana obviously has a lot of natural gas. They've got the Henry Hub, and they're also about 3/4 of their grid is natural gas for electricity. So it's really important to have the dispatchable power on the grid, and it happens to be the cheapest way to do it from a reliability perspective for ratepayers.
Yeah, and they have and they obviously have a very strong pipeline network, the Henry Hub, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Which again is another way, the transportation. They're not facing the same transportation issues that places like New York and Alaska are, because they can get it through pipelines. And in fact, I forgot to mention, Kathy Hochul had actually signed she's approved 2 natural gas pipelines, which has made her unpopular with her green friends as well. But the bottom line is you've got to get that gas from where it is to you without having to ship it over the water. That's the only way you're going to get it done. And these places like Louisiana and Florida and Kentucky, they've embraced that idea.
Absolutely. Kentucky in particular is interesting because they have a lot of coal. They're really one of the states, aside from West Virginia and things, that are major coal producers, and they have that on site. And so about 2/3 of their grid is powered by coal. And they're 21% lower prices than the national average, according to this report that we've written. So it's an important thing. 26% of their grid is natural gas too, so they really don't have tons of renewables to speak of at all. But they've done it very successfully with coal and natural gas, and those are remarkably cheap resources to be relying on, and they're dispatchable.
Sarah Montalbano is our guest. Sarah, summate this for us here. It's an interesting report because it goes through a lot of details, and it talks again about how this is really a policy, right? This is state level policy choices that are being made. And if you've got states that are jumping into this whole, super aggressive renewable, 100% renewable, carbon free targets, all these kind of things, this just becomes I guess like a Christmas program for many of these manufacturers and everything else. But again, it doesn't deliver the dispatchable, reliable power that we're looking for. This is a problem.
Yeah, once looking at the US, we see a lot of little experiments about how to power the grid. And what you find is that when you are growing your shares of wind and solar in your grids, electricity is getting more expensive. And a lot of people would say that geography is a factor, but I want to point out the difference between Hawaii and Alaska here, which I think are really the only two legitimate states you can say this about. Hawaii is the most expensive state for electricity in the United States, 35.83 cents per kilowatt hour. Alaska is number 6 on our ranking, and it's 23 cents per kilowatt hour across all sectors. I think residential is a little higher. And that 43% difference between them is policy choices that Hawaii's made that Alaska hasn't. And so all of this to say, lawmakers and legislators need to be looking at how they can make things more affordable and roll back some of these requirements if they can.
Sarah Montalbano is our guest. Our Montalbano Monday continues here in just a moment. We're going to continue with her. We're going to talk about the Alaska LNG project, the Glenfarne announcement, and new movements there. Although we still haven't seen the final investment decision. We were supposed to see those numbers at the end of 2025. We'll see what happens with that. We'll get Sarah's take on this in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll be back with more right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, Sarah Montalbano is our guest. That 23 cents average is just an average. Willie, who lives out in the bush, Willie says AVEC, a rural co-op, just announced that they're filing for a 14.5% rate increase, and the Bethel area coverage cost is 74 cents per kilowatt hour. Said the CEO of that is a green freak out there. 74 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity in that area. Whew, man. I thought my electric bill was bad. 74 cents a kilowatt hour would triple it. That's just you couldn't afford. I mean, I would go out of business at that point. That's insane. When it comes down to this. But again, it's the policies. And you talked about this when you were in Minnesota. I mean, the same kind of thing where they're trying to take this grid and they're trying to make it all green, but that just not only does it cost an exorbitant amount up front, it makes it super unreliable in the end.
Absolutely. And Minnesota's main problem is that they don't allow consideration of new nuclear reactors. They're the strictest moratorium in the United States. And so if they want to actually do this, they need to loosen that up and they need to start building new nuclear ASAP. The problems in the villages out in Bethel, like that 75 cents per kilowatt hour, that's amazing. And that's what makes me really hopeful about micro reactors and small modular reactors. I think Alaska is a perfect use case for this kind of thing if we can do it very safely and with Nuclear Regulatory Commission oversight. They've had a design that's been approved, and I know Eielson is building this pilot program. I want to say it'll be done 27 or 28. I would have to look at that again. But all that to say is I think we're right on the edge of getting this technology ready to go. And then we can start deploying it, which is really exciting, I think. And it'll bring a lot of relief for ratepayers and be more reliable than what we currently have going.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the micro reactors, these little batteries. We've got the thorium salt reactors. We had a conversation a few years ago with one of the gentlemen that helped invent the thorium salt reactor and how they're working with ONI and all the other organizations to try and bring this to market. Because I think that definitely is the future of where we need to go, because again, of the affordability between that and hydro, we probably would be covered and wouldn't have to worry about the emissions, so to speak, down in the middle. Fat Ray says, that's all well and good, Sarah, but how many genders do their grade school kids know? about. I mean, that's what's important, right? That's what's important. Again, and he's making a joke, but that's really what this ends up being in the end. This is all virtue signaling with taxpayer dollars, that how great and how green and how all this we are. But and like you said, there's groups that are suing Hochul for not following this mandate, even though it would destroy the economy. It would destroy the economy. And they're just like, so what? We'll all go back.
She said as much.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's remarkable because she's being pushed from the left flank. And, honestly, you're a more electable politician if you actually try to be moderate about this going into 2026. I have to say I'm skeptical that there's any actual changes of heart in Hochul's soul there about all of these policies. But I think it's good for ratepayers to back off of this stuff. And so there's a lot of problems with the environmental left pushing harder on this flank. And again, opposing a lot of the natural resource projects that are supposed to be creating a more abundant supply of electricity,
Right.
which I'm excited to talk about in the next segment here.
How big of an issue do you think that energy prices are going to be in the upcoming elections, the midterms, and then the next presidential election? I mean, how big an issue do you think that this is going to be in regards to that?
I think the Democrats see this as really their egg prices issue. Remember when the Biden administration was being blamed for the price of eggs? They weren't nearly as culpable as everyone thinks because there was a bird flu outbreak. And I think what they're going to lock onto here in the midterms is this idea that, the Trump administration's canceling the wind projects and solar credits and, all of these things that are going to bring more electrons onto the grid. And that doesn't, take note of the fact that these are intermittent and unpredictable electrons on the grid, but that they're going to get on this messaging. And I think we've already seen several elections at the end of last year that were decisive on the electricity and energy affordability issues. So it's an exciting time to be in this space, but I think there's a lot of education that needs to be done.
It's going to be interesting to watch for sure.
Mm-hmm.
This election cycle. Oof, man, I can't even imagine. Mark's asking about gas to liquid technology. And I think they put that aside right now, Mark, because they're focusing on the AKLNG line. It's very expensive to do the gas to liquids. And if you could do it with tankers, that'd be one thing, but you can't.
Agreed.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Okay, Sarah Montalbano is our guest. Montalbano Mondays. You can find her on Substack, by the way. Go over there and see what she has to find. You can just Google Montalbano Mondays and you'll find her right there. We love having her on. She's always given us some great insight. We were just talking about this report called Blue States High Rates, and you should go out and read it. If you haven't, I'll drop a link into the chat room again for folks who haven't had a chance to see it yet. But I also want to talk about Alaska Gas because you are the new energy expert there for policies and things like that. You've been kind of watching what's going on in Alaska. This discussion about the AKLNG line. They've now come to the legislature and asked for special consideration and tax breaks and other things, but we still haven't seen the final investment decision, which is the number. What is the estimated cost? Because the last number we have is from the Walker administration, $44 billion during the Walker administration, which is almost 10 years ago. And we haven't seen the new number yet. But Glenn Farnes making all these announcements and everything else about new. What was the latest one here? Was the
Donlin Gold project?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
The Donlin Gold had said that they would take some gas, and of course Japan has said they'll take some gas, and Korea said they'll take some gas. What do you think, Sarah? Give us your take on the AKLNG project. Is this doable? Is it more pie in the sky? Do we need a number? What's your take on this?
I think it's closer to feasibility than it's ever been. And to say that, I don't know that it'll necessarily get done, but I'm hoping it will. And I think that is just such a function of how much of a clear priority it is for the Trump administration. It's obviously something that is so important to them, and I think for Alaskans, because what they've said in this press release about the Donlin Gold Project, they're going to be supplying some of this natural gas to this gold mine. But they also point out that, look, we're planning first for this pipeline to meet Alaska's domestic energy needs, and then we could get this export facility going for the rest. So I think with our natural gas shortage here in Alaska, it's going to be incredibly important to come up with as many ways as possible to fix this in the event that any of them aren't ready at the point where we're going to need it. I think you've told me the year before. Is it 2028 that we're going to need more natural gas?
Yeah, 2020, late 2027 for early 2028 was the estimated time. Now that may have changed since because these things are kind of fluid. But I know that Chugach Electric has already said that they're just looking at importing at this point, because they're not going to fiddle fart around and wait to the last minute. They're going to go ahead and import. MEA and NSTAR are still talking about what nobody knows. But yeah, some people already decided we can't wait around. We can't wait around for this to happen. We've got to put these import facilities and get them ready, because otherwise the whole South Central will you'll flick the lights out. We get another winter like we've had here, where it's been super cold and everything else. And the costs are just going to be astonishing, and we can't be waiting for gas to arrive.
I agree. And I think this is going to be the Alaska LNG pipeline will be a great option, assuming that it is built in time. But without, I think, full throttle support from the administration, without moving as fast as they reasonably can, I don't think it'll be in place in time to deal with the natural gas shortage. So all of those are good options for the rail belt utilities to be looking at. I think we discussed before the letter with I think the 5 rail belt utility groups pointing out that, hey, we should be looking again at this hydroelectric dam on the Susitna. And we need to be looking at this, and we need to be prioritizing affordability and reliability, and that's the right approach. So I hope that all of these utilities are really thinking seriously about it, and it sounds like they are, because we can't wait for AKLNG, especially if they're still looking to secure support for their final investment decision. I think that's something we were expecting at the end of last year, and it's only a couple weeks into the new year, but still. We got to work fast here.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, we were expecting the final numbers to come out at the end of the year, and like you said, well, it's only a couple weeks into the new year, but we've been waiting all year for it. This is the linchpin, right? I mean, this is the linchpin that holds this whole project together. I mean, if it goes from 44 billion to 80 billion, then is it still financially feasible, right? And of course, the $44 billion number was all before COVID. It was before Japan bought up U.S. Steel. It's before the tariffs. It's before all these other things. And so there's no doubt. I mean, electricity costs have gone up 38% in 5 years. What's happened to everything else in 10 years since the last pricing was done on something like this?
I think the administration is going to get involved, and I can't say whether I think that's a good thing or not, but I think there will be a lot of federal support for this to make it happen. And I think that's kind of an unfortunate part of our permitting process, right? Is they can't make this happen unless they have this strong personal support from the chief executive. Like, that's not how permitting was supposed to work. And so I think they've got most of what they need. They just need to get the financials in place. And I think ultimately the federal government's going to step in to make sure that it can happen. Good or not, we'll have to see.
It's interesting because in the Donlin announcement, one of the things that they talked about was that they are this letter of intent for the infrastructure. they're talking about how they're going to have to build out a 230-mile pipeline to get the gas to them up there in Crooked Creek. And the question, of course, then many people ask is, or 315-mile pipeline. What is it going to take? Are they going to build it themselves? Are they going to, are they going to ask the state for help? I mean, that's always the question in all these things. Who pays the final bill in the end?
Yeah, who pays? Because we ultimately don't want this to land on ratepayers in any way. And that's not how it would really work here. But yeah, the companies, the news release I saw is that the companies are called upon to cooperate on developing that 315 miles. So I assume that means they're going to cost share in some way. But again, I think if AKLNG is dependent on, state and federal money or tax breaks, then that might be something that they're paying for through, the taxpayer, which wouldn't be a good thing. But, all of that to say is we've put billions and billions of dollars of federal tax money, state tax money into intermittent, unreliable wind and solar. And my feeling on it is if we are going to be spending money on these kind of things, we should do it for a dispatchable, reliable source of electricity and something that'll ultimately be more affordable for the ratepayers. So that's kind of my philosophy on it as well. We've done a lot of this for wind and solar, and now perhaps it's time for the reliable side.
Yeah. And I think you and I have come to the conclusion amongst ourselves, and you're obviously much better versed at this than I am, that hydro and nuclear are the two, long-term. If you're looking for long-term solutions, hydro, obviously great. Nuclear, also the option. We could have a mixed bag portfolio of those things with some generation of coal and natural gas on the side, all of it 100% dispatchable all the time. And that's the important part again. And for folks we keep saying dispatchable power, that is constant, steady, available power at any time. You flick the switch, it's there. Unlike solar and wind, which may or may not be there. Final thoughts here, Sarah Montalbano. We got about 90 seconds here. Final thoughts on this article, this report rather, and AKLNG, anything else that we may have missed here this morning?
I think all I would say about it is, that affordable energy is really the lifeblood of the human civilization here, and we need to be doing our best to get more of it at an affordable price. And that's what excites me about projects like AKLNG is hopefully at the end of all of this thing, it'll come out to be a net positive for everybody involved. So that's in general what I would say about this. And blue states are going the opposite direction. They've implemented a lot of policies that have saturated their grid with renewables, and that's led to things being more expensive and less reliable all at the same time. So I'm excited to be at Always On Energy Research. You can check out our work, aoenergy.org, and continue to follow me on Montalbano Mondays. I'll be continuing to post there, as well as in my capacity as a senior fellow at the Independent Women Forum.
The original Montalbano Monday right here on the Michael Duke Show. We'll be back with more right after this. Yeah, don't forget, baby. Don't forget where that came from. I'm
indebted.
No, it's awesome. I can't wait. I watch this stuff, and you are much more positive about the AKLNG line than I am. I would love to see an Alaska LNG line. I really would. I mean, to Alaskans to have access to their own resource, for it to be affordable. I mean, to drive down the cost of energy from places, from 35 or 40 cents a kilowatt hour down to 20. I mean, that would be great. But again, it all comes down to what's the cost going to be, and nobody knows. And there's a lot of supposition. Again, we know that 44 billion was the number just 10 years ago, but we also know that nothing costs what it did 10 years ago, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I would say I'm not positive necessarily, but I'm hopeful. And I'm hopeful just in the sense that I think if the finances don't work out on their own, I think the Trump administration is going to go in and make it work. Which again, good thing or bad thing, it's I think likely to happen.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting point, because they could declare again a national security issue, what do they call that? National. They did it during World War II when they built those two pipelines and then turned them over later on after World War II, the two major pipelines in the East, where they just built them and said it. But yeah, I mean, something would have to happen. I think it will take that kind of outside influence, for good or for bad. It'll take that kind of outside influence for AKLNG line to actually come to fruition. I'm with you. Like you said, I believe that I'm hopeful. This is what I've been saying. I'm hopeful, but I'm not optimistic. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
right?
that's roughly how I'd describe it. And all of this is so interesting because I'd like to take a look at the cost estimates and see what I can do now that I'm in a place where I should be looking at some of the true costs of things. So
I can't wait. I can't wait to get some analysis from you. That'll be some fun stuff. All right. Well, Sarah, dear, you are amazing, and we appreciate you coming on board. And I can't tell you how excited I am for you in this new gig. And I hope that things just keep getting better for you in 2020.
Me too. Yeah.
So,
It's been great. Happy New Year. Thank you.
Happy New Year to you, and we reserve the right to call you anytime. Wait a second. Does Sarah think that domestic production can be achieved more cost effective than importing? I'm assuming here in Alaska. That's the question. That's the hard one, right?
Yeah, that's the question. I think ultimately in the long run, it'll be less expensive to do it domestically, but whether it's ready in time for when we really need it, that's the real question.
Well, and the question of the upfront cost. It depends on what the upfront cost is. Can you get domestic production down to a certain level? Well, sure. If you don't factor in the upfront cost, I'm sure you could do it. Great, but where does it go from there? So it's a good question.
Yeah.
All right, Sarah. No, Sarah cannot come back tomorrow from 6 to 7 a.m.
It's not a Monday.
It's not a Monday, although she has been on here not on Mondays before, but we try and reserve Mondays for her because it's a great way to start off the week. All right, Sarah, thanks, hon. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Right. Bye-bye. Sarah Montalbano, our guest here on Montalbano Mondays. Great chance to talk with her. Some good stuff. We've got Dave Mastolier here in the green room. Let's check his audio and video here real quick to see where he's at, and let's go on here and check it out. Good morning, Dave. How are you?
Hey, good morning. I'm doing good. How am I sounding?
Good. You sound great. I'm looking forward to it. You ready to chit chat about state forests and snow machining, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, you bet.
Okay, good. I'm going to put you back in the green room for a minute. We're going to start the show here in about 2 minutes, and we'll be right back to you here. So don't go anywhere. All right. What Frank says, my trapping license still costs the same as 10 years ago. Yeah, Frank, thanks for naming the one outlier. Name me one other thing that costs less or the same as it did 10 years ago. There's not much. There's not much out there as well. Willie said Mary Peltola just announced a run against Sullivan. Yeah, that happened on Sunday. It happened yesterday. And we'll talk a little bit about that here as well, I think probably before the end of the hour. Willie says Donlin Mine needs a general obligation bond sponsored by the state to build the gas line from Cook Inlet to Crooked Creek, put us in debt for a fully private owned mine. That's not what the release said. And I agree with with what Sarah said, that it looked like that it may be a cost share between AKLNG and Donlin on that. The companies would work to formalize a potential natural gas agreement for up to 50 million cubic feet of natural gas per day, and also to cooperate on the most effective method for development and construction of an approximately 315-mile-long natural gas pipeline from South Central to Donlin Gold Mine in Southwest, and a power plant to supply electricity to the mine. So maybe, I don't know, Willie, maybe, but we'll have to see, look, there you go. All right. Hunting and fishing licenses also. I mean, Frank is stuck on the one thing that's costing the same after, for 10 years. Has anyone talked about building a power plant, say north of Fairbanks, bring the main line down a little every year? Building a power plant on the north slope. The problem with that, of course, has to do with line loss. And there has been discussion on creating a DC power plant because DC power has very little loss compared to AC. There's been some discussion on that in the past, but it just doesn't pencil out in the long run. That's the problem. All right, we got to go. Up next, Dave Mastolier from Snomads. We'll be back.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com, where you'll find links to the audio-only stream and the podcast. Also, our social media sites like Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble, where we simulcast the show every morning. And, of course, live around the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station, and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the program. Hour 2 of the big radio show. We just finished up with Sarah Montalbano. If you missed her for Montalbano Mondays, you can always pick it up on the podcast. Some great discussions there. But now into hour 2, we're about to talk about this new proposal for a state forest. The Department of Natural Resources is gathering community input on the potential establishment of a Kenai Peninsula State Forest. There was a meeting last week in Homer. There was one previous to that in Nikiski or Ninilchik. I can't remember which one. But the Division of Forestry is trying to decide whether or not they're gauging interest, they say, on whether or not they should create a state forest, in part, apparently, to create some logging infrastructure to manage the forest for logging and timber harvest, and to deal with beetle kills and everything else. There's a lot of questions. Now, one of the problems, of course, with this is much of the area that they've been talking about has been used for recreation across the state in various forms, a variety of forms. But one of the major ones that they've talked about and has created quite a bit of pushback is snow machining up in areas including the Caribou Hills and some other areas around here. So I've invited the president of Snomads, which is the snow machining organization down here on the Southern Peninsula, to come on and talk with us about this, to give us their take on this and what their understanding of it is. And so let's jump on over to this. Dave Mastolier, the president of Snomad, joins us this morning to discuss this, and let's get right to it. Good morning, Dave. How are you doing?
Good morning, Michael. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, appreciate you taking the time to come out and be part of this. So, Dave, let's talk about this here for a bit. Let's actually start from the beginning. This was a little bit of a surprise, right? I mean, this was kind of came out of the blue. It seems like nobody really knew what was going on with this until they announced this kind of surprise meeting. Even our legislators were like, didn't seem to have much of an idea about what was going on. So give us your story here on the genesis of this and where this came in and what you were, how you learned about it.
Yeah, you nailed it. This kind of took us all by surprise. I can say I think the process is flawed. To just put something out there that says, we want to do a state forest on the Kenai Peninsula. Are you guys interested? And not identifying exactly where the areas are that they want to look at. I mean, I firmly believe they have areas that they think are good for a state forest. And I think those areas should have probably been identified. So yeah, it was a scare. Kenai Peninsula is such a unique area in that we've got state parks, which are wonderful for your non-motorized group. I use it a lot. I love hiking across the bay. We've got the wildlife refuge. It's great for moose management, great for moose hunting, non-motorized though. We've got the Kenai fjords. We've got all sorts of restricted areas. The critical habitat area, Fritz Creek, Anchor River critical habitat area. And then amongst all that is a gem, a little area called the Caribou Hills Recreational Area. And that area allows motorized use. So all users, whether you're non-motorized or motorized, we all have our own special place on the Kenai Peninsula. So when they threw this out there to have a state forest, yeah, it was a red flag that we knew that the Caribou Hills Management Area is an ideal area for a state forest. And when I say that, I know I'm going to get a bunch of people going, oh, there's no trees out there. This is horrible. What are you thinking? Well, this is a 100-year plan. And we have to think back before the beetle kill came through. There was actually some spruce trees there. And
right.
Those spruce trees did have a value to them. Contractors will argue that the spruce we have on the Kenai Peninsula is the worst to build with. I'm not going to argue with that. I own a cabin, a 24 by 28 log cabin built out of spruce, rough cut spruce. And it was difficult to work with to create this thing. I still have my issues with this rough cut spruce, but there's still a market value. That little mill that sold me this lumber, he made money off this. So, but the last thing we want to see is something come in and cut off access to our gem of an area where we get to have motorized recreation.
It's and it's interesting because I noticed on the first meeting, again, they were just taking information. They were talking about it. At that point, I think Caribou Hills was actually included in the discussion. And later on, I think that they got such a flamethrower response, I guess would be my reaction from the public, that they made it very clear in the next meeting that they all these areas except Caribou Hills. And he said, let's see, where does it say? DFFP Special Projects Coordinator Lily Coyle addressed concerns from folks asking about Caribou Hills, saying it, quote, wouldn't make sense, unquote, to include the area in the proposal since it's already classified as best use for recreation. Well, but we know how well some of this stuff holds up sometimes, right? It's already pre-designated, but we decided to include it. And of course, what's your understanding of the justification for the state forest? I mean, this is already state land, right? But it's run, instead of by forestry, it's being run by what? Mining and water or something. It's not being run by the Forestry Service. And this all comes back to that idea of logging and timber and that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Michael, I need to clarify, because I am not promoting a state forest. However, what my mindset is, so that everybody understands, I do have an agenda. My agenda is to preserve the Caribou Hills recreational area and preserve motorized recreation and access into this backcountry. Now, saying that, I've been to 3 of the different meetings. I've been to the Ninilchik one. I've been to the Homer one. But we also had one online that was motorized recreational organizations were invited. And honestly, I was the only one there for the first 45 minutes to an hour. And the others all showed up late. So it was wonderful. I got an opportunity to talk to, I think there was probably 9 forestry people there, and it was a real good heart to heart. So I got a good education. So as I'm speaking, I would ask that people understand I'm not promoting a state forest, but I am trying to preserve recreation. So the state forest, I understand where they're coming from. Right now we had the beetle kill come through and the growth isn't coming back real good. And it is a real fire hazard. When the beetle kill did come through, if people remember, I had property up on West Hill at that time. That's where I was living. And some of my trees lived and there were some that died. And it was because the forest was varied. There was old growth and there was new growth.
Right.
And the new growth, which were good trees, they made it. The old ones died. Out in the hills, that was all old growth and it wiped it out. And that's why everybody's saying, well, there's no timber out there. Well, yeah, beetle and fire have devastated it. So a state forest, they can put money into reseeding. They can invest into preserving the forest, which I don't think that's all bad for motorized recreational users. If we actually have a good, healthy forest, I think that's kind of good.
I think you made an interesting point at the beginning, though, when you were talking about there are all of these, and this is what I've always found interesting here in Alaska, is that we have these vast, wide open spaces, all this area, and yet we've got a lockdown on a lot of it for motorized usage. And the areas are so vast that a lot of times, I mean, it only, unless you want to take a week off to go recreate somewhere, you got to, the motorization is the only way that it's going to make it feasible for you to get there. And I found it interesting that it seems like the vast majority of these state areas, whether they're national parks or preserves state parks or preserves or whatever they are, that most of them are non-motorized. And so it seems like you guys are getting boxed into a smaller and smaller area. And this, I think, was that clarion call. I know I talked to a couple people, I'm looking at you, Bill, in the chat room, a couple people who almost lost their minds when this came out because they felt like they were getting squeezed out of one of the last few areas where they can actually go do things that they want with motorized vehicles.
That, I'm glad you brought that up, Michael, because that is my number one concern. First of all, everybody has to understand the Caribou Hills management plan is not legislatively designated. So that means this could easily be taken away. In 1993, when the plan was originally adopted, the area was larger, this management plan. In 2001, when they updated it, 2 sections of land were removed and given to the Kenai Peninsula Borough. Just that quick, just that easy.
Right.
And so that's the part where, does a state forest help us preserve what we have? Because right now, if we get a different administration in there, somebody else running DNR, and they decide the best use of this land is to give to the Kenai Peninsula Borough for them to do something with it, it's taken away.
Right.
It's not preserved forever. And that's something I think why I'm trying to look at the big picture is change will always happen. I've lived in Alaska since 76 and I've seen nothing but change.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting to watch, the discussions around this. Again, there's been a lot of heated concern and rhetoric. Actually, one of the other things for folks who are listening in the interior, they also said during that same meeting, one of the foresters there said that creating the new state forest would expand the Tanana Valley State Forest by 600,000 acres. So we're actually talking about 2 different parts of the state facing some of the same kind of stuff. And again, I'm for management. I mean, if we want to manage our forest, that's great. But it seems to me, from my perspective, in my humble opinion, that we have so few areas where full recreation with all the modern technology, motorized vehicles, etc., are available to us, that any time that they start talking about this, your radar ought to go off and go, wait a second, what's happening? Because there's plenty of areas you can hike into, but not a lot of areas where you can utilize and use those motorized vehicles for your own recreation as well.
That's true. The Tanana Valley, the Tanana State Forest is actually a good example. You can do motorized recreation in there. And this is where I think it's really important if we, and again, I'm not promoting it, but if we use it as a tool to preserve what we have, it might be the best thing we best move forward. And so I don't want to shut this out completely. I don't want to slam the door on it.
Right.
And not understand this fully. If we engage early, we could actually put in what we want into the management plan into the state forest and ensure that motorized recreational use is part of it.
Right.
If we sit back and do nothing, the state is going to do something with this land as budgets get tighter and tighter and they try to figure out how to make more money and utilize our resources. Something, all around the Caribou Hills recreational area is going to get narrowed down. And that's one problem is, Michael, people don't understand. They think the Caribou Hills recreational area is all of the Caribou Hills. I mean, we're riding everywhere, but the management plan is smaller than what people think.
Well, let's get into that here in just a second. We're talking with Dave Mastolier, who is the president of Snomads. We'll give you a brief summation of Snomads here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show continues. We got more coming up. We'll continue with Dave Mastolier in just a minute. Your home for common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll be back right after this.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, we're in the break right now. Dave Mastolier is our guest. Brian just said he lives up in the Matsu. He said, we fought and largely lost some of these same issues at the government peak recreation area. The motorized advocates just didn't show up. Well, you were just talking about that, Dave. You had an opportunity. All the motorized people were invited, and you were the only guy. I mean, is this just apathy? Is it just not a priority? Do people just feel like their voice is not being heard? Why? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, actually, that particular meeting I was at, it was because they were doing something in the valley, trying to fight something. They were in another meeting that they were having to deal with, so they just showed up late. But yes, Michael, it's we see it with Snomads. We have over 400 members. We have what I would call 30 active members. Of those 30 active members, we have 10 members that do all the work, and it's the way life is.
Sure.
We have people sit on the sidelines. It's a little bothersome for me. We have people sit on the sidelines and complain about stuff that's not getting done, but it's like, well, you know what?
Yeah, really. If you'd get up off your rusty dusty, maybe you could help us with this.
Yeah. I have no mercy for the well, I hate to say freeloaders, but sorry, that's what I call it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I think a lot of this, and somebody just said, Terry just said, in my mind, it's just another play to turn the state of Alaska into a park. I mean, again, that's always been kind of my take on a lot of these things, is because for the most part, motorized vehicles are like verboten, right? They're the enemy. No, stay away, And while I understand that there should be some areas where they're not allowed, again, it's so vast and it's so great, and most people, take care of stuff that it frustrates me that we are disallowed to use some of our own public lands in a beneficial way. It's not like we got a bunch of horse farms out here where we can go get horses and ride across the thing like they can do down in the western states. It's a whole different thing, and nobody's running dog sleds in the middle of summer, so it's a tough situation when you're trying to get this motorized and protecting what motorization that there is in the community, right?
Yeah, that's very, very well said. I mean, and quite honestly, unless you get up into the real high country, hiking in the Caribou Hills is miserable. I don't know if anybody that's hiked in Muskeg understands that that's not fun. And trying to go through the forest right now with all these down trees, that's even less fun.
Yeah.
And
I've done some hunting on the Tanana Flats, and let me tell you, that's not a place you want to go hiking. You know what I mean? That's not a place that you want to go. I mean, I was 20 years old and I was tired. You know what I mean? It's like I couldn't even imagine trying to do it now. There's just places where you need to be able to use the motorized vehicles and get it in there. And especially someplace that historically has been used for that. That's the thing. And I think that's why you saw such a visceral reaction, is because I think a lot of people feel the same way that I do, that the use of motorized vehicles is under attack in a lot of ways. And they're afraid that their lifestyle and their hobby is going to be squeezed out.
Yep. No, that's exactly what's happening. And I'll put this blurb out there that we do need to be, that's one of Snomads things. We do need to be responsible in how we do the motorized recreational, how we use them. As an example, the Watermelon Trail, we've just put two bridges over the salmon streams.
Right.
But it's, again, in the state forest part, one of the things that, everybody gets afraid because of the state forest. And the biggest reason, I think, is when I say a national forest, let's say Mike, I'll ask you, the Chugach National Forest. When you drive to Anchorage and you drive through the Chugach National Forest, do you think logging or do you think park?
Oh, I think park. That's what I think.
And that's the problem, is that,
right.
A little history on the National Forest Service.
Hold on. You can give us this here in just a second. We're about to rejoin. So we'll come back to the Chugach National Forest here. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Let's do it.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
I'm a perfect angel. I don't know what he's talking about. Everybody loves me. Nobody hates me. All right, we're going to continue now. Dave Mastolier is with us. He's the president of Snomads, and I guess I should have started with this, Dave. Tell us a little bit about Snomads. I want to get back into what we were talking about during the break, but tell me a little bit about Snomads as an organization and what you guys do and what you stand for and some of the service works you guys have done. You were just talking about the bridges over the salmon streams and stuff. So tell us about Snomads.
So Snomads, we're not only a snow machine organization. I mean, that's how it started off, little tiny group. And it's advanced, it's grown. Now we support motorized recreational, off-road recreational use and snow machines. We didn't get involved in the jet ski issue. That's not our area. So trying to lay out the division there.
Right.
We're on the land. And we're trying to be, we believe in being allowed to use motorized vehicles, ATVs. Not everybody can hike. And most people in Snomads are big advocates for getting out in the wilderness, outdoors, have fun. And some people, quite honestly, a motorized vehicle is the only way they're going to get out there. And that's great. And you can take your kids to your grandpa and go out and have fun as a family.
Right.
So it allows that kind of thing. So Snomads tries to promote the responsible use of them. And an example is I'll use the Watermelon Trail. That was a trail that's been used since the 50s. And the state, gave the Siri land. When they did the Anilka, Siri was given the land, and the state didn't note the trail, and Siri got the land, and Siri has cut that trail off. They said no use of it. So basically, the citizens of the Lower Kenai Peninsula, the state did a disservice, and now they've left it up to the citizens to deal with it. So we're having to pay for it. And Snomads has. This year, we're going to pay over $100,000 to install these 2 bridges, finish clearing the trail. I think we got the 3rd bridge to deal with. And that's what Snomads is about. It's trying to be responsible motorized users, whether it be snow machines or ORVs.
Yep, exactly. Well, and I mean, I think that's the thing that, there's bad actors in every group, and we can all tell stories about people who've torn up trails or done whatever. But the bottom line is that the people that do it all the time are the ones that want to keep it, preserve it, keep it, conserve it to the maximum use and be able to do it. Before, while we were in the break, you were talking about, kind of mindset and what people think about when they hear state park or national forest or state forest. And you asked me, while I'm driving down the road there and I'm going by the inlet and I'm coming down to Homer and I see the big sign that says Chugach Forest, what's my first thought? Am I thinking logging or timber, or am I thinking recreation and camping or whatever? And of course, my first thought was, recreation and camping. And you were going to give us some thoughts on that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I understand when people hear state forest, they think, I'm sure they're drawn to national forest. We drive through it every time we go to Anchorage. And the National Forest Service was created in the early 1900s. I think it was 1901 or 1909. And it was because there was rampant logging and they wanted to have some control over the logging. But it was all pro-logging. And then in the 60s to the 80s, the environmental lawsuits started up. And the National Forest Service basically got to the point of it's easier to say no than to have to deal with all of the lawsuits. So now what we have today is the result of what started off good and is now, what we all think of is, looks like when you drive by through the Chugach. I'm not sure I've ever seen logging done in the Chugach forest.
No, not that I'm aware of.
But the difference with the state forest is we do get to start early. And I'm not saying it's not going to change. Everything changes. But if we sit back and we go, well, let's do nothing, that's not a good, that gives them an answer. And the state may go, well, maybe a forest is not what we want to do with that land, but maybe we can transfer it to the borough and let the borough do something with that land.
Right.
And so who knows? It's something is going to happen to that land. And we have been given an opportunity to maybe guide how this goes.
Well, it's better to have a voice in these kind of decisions than to not at that point. And if you know that a decision of some kind is inevitable, much better that you are there to help shape that decision rather than to just throw your hands up in the air and wander off in the pucker brush and grumble about it, right? And just bitch and complain about it. The good news on part of this, though, is that this is not strictly a decision that can be made by the divisions, right? I mean, this is something that has to go and be put forward, and the legislature, my understanding is that the legislature actually has to codify it in a bill and put it together. Is that correct?
That's how I understand it too, Michael. And the state forest also has a citizens advisory committee. And, something I would be pushing hard for is that two seats, one from the Caribou Hills Cabin Hoppers and one for Snomads, is reserved on that citizens advisory committee. So there's always a motorized representation there.
User groups, right. And
Yep.
that's been and I'll be honest with you, part of the problem that I think a lot of these areas have, especially when they have advisory committees, is that people are busy. They're not really paying attention. And yet those that have causes, especially environmental causes, they're all about that, and they seem to pack a lot of these boards, and that's how you end up getting the short end of the shrift when it comes time to make these decisions, because the boards are all made up of people who are unified in a single cause for a single ideal of especially environmental protection, and they don't want to hear anything about motorize this or motorize that, or people who've been doing it for years, and this is a historic thing. That doesn't matter to them, and that's why we have to get involved in these things, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yep. That's there would be a lot of changes out there that nobody would like if Snomads wasn't here, or the cabin hoppers.
Yeah. So what can folks do here? We're down to about the last 4 minutes here or so, Dave. What can folks do? I mean, I know that they're in the middle of meetings. They haven't made any decisions. This is their information gathering phase, quote unquote. So what should people do who live in the Southern Peninsula, or who live across the peninsula, that want to have any kind of input on this? What do they need to do? And where can they go to get information? Is Snomads putting stuff out? Give us an action plan here.
So Snowman, we did. In fact, I put out some emails, and thanks for bringing this up, Michael, right away, because when this came out, it was a scare. And so the first thing we wanted to do was make sure everybody got emails out saying, not the Caribou Hills recreational area. Well, they got that loud and clear.
Right.
I would like to see everybody now send an email saying, not the Caribou Hills recreational area, but we'd like to learn more about other areas. And we want motorized access always preserved within it. And that, I think, would open the door so that we can learn more and maybe manage how this is done if it's something we want.
Do you think there's an opportunity here as they look at these areas as a whole, not just, outside of Caribou Hills? Do you think that there's an opportunity here maybe for some compromise to where if they do start to create some of these areas, that you could get expanded motorized access into some of these areas that heretofore have not been available for that?
Exactly. No, I think that's a good way to put it. There's an opportunity here. State Forest is not against motorized use. That's something everybody needs to understand. So that's why I see this is an opportunity if we play our cards right.
And we've just got to have a battle plan and an action plan to be able to do it, right? And that's part of what you guys are doing there at Snomads, is trying to put this all together. What are some of the other proposed areas, Dave, that you are familiar with that may be opportunistic for folks here in the future? Any other areas that stand out in your mind in the areas that they've highlighted or talked about?
No, quite honestly, Michael, they just put a big map out that showed the Kenai Peninsula, and
everywhere.
So
nope.
I would, the biggest issue that I want to see is I want to see the Caribou Hills preserved. And if it's not preserved right now. That's the part that everybody has to understand. Right now it is, but somebody with a pen can change this.
Right.
Because the legislature has not designated it as a recreational area.
Oh, this is just a division designation, not a legislative designation.
Exactly. We get a new administration in, and they find a better use for this, so they feel. I don't know if they'll even have public comment. There might be, but I'm not sure how that process works. But it's not solid. So the state forest might give us that opportunity. We need to look further into it.
Right. Well, if folks want to get involved, Dave, if they want to be part of it, if they want to get on your email list, if they want to, I don't know if you're creating a new email list for this situation specifically or not, but how do folks who are out there get more involved in this and find out more and be part of Snomads, or at least for this contingent of it?
Well, first of all, they should join Snomads, because strength in numbers, and that's been a big part of it. Is when I can go to a politician and say, we have over 400 members on the lower Kenai Peninsula. That's a lot of members for this little community.
Right.
So I'd like to see 600 members. So instead of sitting on Facebook complaining, join Snomads.
Do it to it. And how do folks do that? How do they join Snomads? What's the best way to do it?
Boy, am I unprepared. You need to go online, look up Snomads.
Let me hit the link here and see if I can get it. Snomads on Facebook. They've got a Facebook group. Snomads.org is the website. Snomads Snowfari Club. And you can go out there and take a look at it and get signed up there as well. And you can find out what they do, everything there. And they've actually got a link there where you can inquire as to how to be part of it. Snomads.org. That's SNOMADS, no W, snomads.org. And you can find that out there. All right. So final thoughts here, Dave Mastolier, president of Snomads, as we get ready to it. When's the next meeting? What do people need to be? What do they need to know? And of course, we know now they need to go to snomads.org, but when's the next meeting and where do we go from here? Final thoughts.
So I'm not sure when the state has the next meeting, but I think we need to voice to them that we are interested in learning more. It's not a slam shut. Snomads, our next meeting is the third Thursday of every month. So we'd love to see people show up and voice their opinions. Okay. Find out more at snomads.org. Dave Mastolier, president of Snomads, thanks for coming on board with us this morning. We appreciate you being part of it. All right. Thank you for having me. All right. Hold the line for just a second, Dave. All right, folks, we got more coming up. One final segment dead ahead. I'll hit on a couple of the headlines. And then we'll be getting geared up for tomorrow. Brad Keithley, Chris Story will be joining us for our normal Tuesday discussion with the weekly top three and our weekly positivity update. All right, we got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Back with more after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, commercial break now. Final thoughts with Dave. Dave, I just wanted to give you one final bite at the apple in case there's anything we missed or anything you wanted to expand on or anything else for you, me, and 50 of our closest friends on the internet right now. I thought I'd just throw that out there to you and see what you had to say. I'll just say again, I'm not promoting a state forest before all my stuff gets filled up with that. But I will say, let's use this as a tool if we can. If it's going to work as a tool to preserve motorized recreation, because right now it is not preserved. And that's the part I want people to understand. It is not preserved. We need to do something to preserve it. And this sounds like a decent opportunity if you can get this folded in as part of that, and especially then given legislative approval and oversight, it would be then locked in. And with the potential, again, of maybe opening up some other areas to motorized recreation that up until this point have been barred. You know, being open is not a bad thing. Being able to control the narrative and control the direction of where this thing goes is not a bad thing. But we can't grow weary in well-doing. We got to keep on keeping on. We got to keep the pressure on them for that part. And like you said, don't slam the door, right? Don't slam the door and just try and shut everything down. Maybe this is the opportunity to use it for a way to get some of your own agenda put forward at the same time and get some protections involved. I think that's a great thing. All right, Dave, thank you so much for coming on board. We appreciate it. Please keep me in the loop. Keep me updated. If anything changes, would you reach out to me and let me know? Yeah, I sure will, Michael. And again, thanks for letting me speak here. Appreciate it. Hey, well, I appreciate you coming on board and taking the time. It's good stuff, and it's good for folks to know. For those of us who aren't into the motorized things and snow machining and outdoor stuff as much as we would like to be, this is a good opportunity to get some education. So I appreciate you coming out for us. Thank you, Dave. Yeah, you bet. Dave Mastolier is our guest, again, with Snomads, bringing us the info and the intel there on that. interesting, and I think one of the things that Dave said, I think there was really interesting, was that he said, as the state gets harder and harder up for money, they're going to look for everything that they can do to monetize things. And I think this is part and parcel of that. I think this is part and parcel of how do we monetize these forests? Well, logging is the ideal. Timber harvest, that's the ideal. But again, we don't want to throw people under the bus and users of those areas under the bus at the same time. And I think they got that feel, because I didn't attend the meeting in Anilchik, but I heard it was voracious. I heard it was almost scorched earth, like kind of thing, right? So, I mean, maybe we don't need to do quite that much when we go to the meetings, but again, you don't want to necessarily slam the door. And if you can utilize it as an opportunity to protect the activities and things that you're doing right now, then maybe that was, then maybe that's a good opportunity to be able to use it and not just shut it down and throw it to the side arbitrarily. Frank says forest management was great in the 60s and 70s. At the same time, the Kenai Peninsula produced the largest and most moose in Alaska. When it changed, the population took off, as did the brown bear population. Yeah, I mean, again, we've seen management, and that's what Dave was talking about. You saw management practices changed throughout the years, and what started off as primarily a way to control and to permit and to direct the way logging was done later went on to become a lot more problematic. And like I said, as more and more people got into the environmental movement, and a lot of those people moved into boards, and they moved into government jobs and government positions, advisory positions, then you started to see that agenda being put forward. And so this is a good opportunity to maybe take a little bit of that back, maybe take just some of that back and do what it is. Chris said, good thing where I live, I can drive out of my driveway and hit the trails into the White Mountains for days. Good for you, my friend. That's good. I always felt bad for people who had to drive, 30 miles to be able to, you had to trailer their snow machine someplace to be able to drive, 30 miles to be able to get it off and go do something. And yeah, it's definitely a frustrating thing. Tim says monetizing anything is just another way of saying tax. Find another way to steal from the people. I mean, you're not wrong, Tim. You're not wrong. But I guarantee you're going to see more talk about different types of taxes this session than ever before. They won't always call it a tax. Resource development, revenue, user fees. There'll always be something. And of course, the biggest tax that we've had over the last almost 10 years has been the taking of the dividend. That's been the biggest tax on Alaskan families in the history of the state. And yet it's still not called a tax, but that's essentially what it is. So we'll see where it goes from there. All right. Well, we're about 15 seconds out here from rejoining the radio. So we're going to get into that. We got one final segment dead ahead. We'll talk about some of the headlines here and get back into it. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay. One final segment for today's program. Appreciate you guys coming in and joining us. Again, don't forget that tomorrow, Brad Keithley, Chris Story joins us. The weekly top three. We'll talk with them about that. It's interesting what Greg was saying, or what Dave was saying early on, when he said that the state was going to be looking for more revenue, right? More revenue. That's what they called it as they start, being hard up for money. And he said that was what he thought was one of the reasons why they started talking about this state forest thing, because again, they're looking at timber And there may be some carbon neutral stuff in there too as well. But I mean, they're looking for a way to generate more revenue, which is a tax, right? A tax of some kind. But I would offer that I think that this year you're going to hear more about different types of taxes than you ever have before. Now, they're not going to call them taxes, right? They'll call it resource development. They'll call it user fees. They'll call it, I don't know, undesignated spending. They're not going to say tax, but everything that in every way, it will have the effect of a tax on it, right? That's what we're going to be looking at. And so I think we'll see more things like what we're seeing right now in this discussion on creating a state forest down on the Kenai Peninsula. And it could happen up there in the interior as well. There could be other things that they've got going on up there. The state is going to desperately be looking for new sources and new forms of revenue. I'm sure that we will also talk about an actual tax. I'm sure that there will be a discussion on an income tax or a sales tax or anything else, because you just don't go into a budgetary cycle with $1 billion shortfall and expect that somebody's not going to talk about that. That's coming. And part of what Dave said, I think, too, interestingly enough, resonated with me in the fact that we have to be talking about it. He said, I'm not, that we need to continue the discussion, that we should be open to at least talking about it. And for the very reason of not necessarily that he's in favor of a state forest, but because he wants to have some say in the decision-making and the direction that those things go, which is one of the reasons why we've talked on this program for the last 8-9 years about the different forms of taxation that are out there. Not because we want a tax, but because at least we want to have a say in the direction that they decide to take us. This idea that you can sit back and just put your fingers in your ears and go, la, 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 I can't hear you. I can't hear you. That, that's great for you. You may feel morally superior about it because you never talked about a tax, right up until the point that they give you a tax anyway because you didn't participate in the discussion. That's an issue for sure. But I guarantee you, we're going to see more of that this year than anything else. This is going to be a super exciting political season. I mean, just super exciting. It's going to be wild. Now we have the news from earlier this morning that if you want more excitement, former U.S. Rep. Mary Peltola has said that she is now going to run against Dan Sullivan. And that's going to be interesting. Somebody in the chat room said, dang, now I have to vote for Sullivan. I didn't want to vote for, dang, now I have to vote for Sullivan. And I think that's the way that a lot of folks are feeling about this right now. It's a frustrating thing. Why do we always end up with, why is it that we always end up with a lesser of two evil choice, right? Because look, Dan's a nice guy. I think I agree with some of his policies, but the vast majority of them, I kind of find myself scratching my head and being like, why would you vote for that? Right? Why would you vote for that? Dan is very much become kind of a Washington senator. He does what he does. And, I can't say that I voted for Dan in the last, because there's just been no good, you know what I mean? It's like Dan is going to win, but there's really nobody else running against him. This is the first time that he's going to have a real challenger in forever. And if you've been watching any kind of YouTube over the last 6 to 9 months, you have seen this $600,000 campaign that they've been waging against Dan Sullivan online. It's huge. Flim Flam Dan, and what was the other? They had another catchy name for him. But I mean, he basically, they have been beating the hell out of him on social media and through internet advertising for months. I suspected that this was probably what was going to happen because they set it up again with all this extra advertising. Now you're going to have two candidates that are well known, and this will be the first real challenger that Dan has had since he took office. But that means that we're going to be left with, again, a choice where we kind of have to hold our nose. If, it's like, I had this argument one time with a friend of mine who was a libertarian, and we were talking about something similar to this, where she basically said, well, then why would you vote at all in this race? If you don't like either candidate, just don't vote for either one. And I'm thinking, but if I don't vote, then and the worse of the two end up getting into office, did I really do anything good? That's when I started talking about my vote being defensive. Like, it's not that I wanted to vote, but I did because it was a defensive vote. It's the lesser of two evils. It's still evil, by the way. The lesser of two evils is still evil. But like I've said a million times, it's like the question of would you like a poo sandwich or a diarrhea milkshake? Oh, is there a third choice? Because I really don't want either one of those. That's kind of what we're left with in this country, though. It's kind of interesting. Now she is going to have, she doesn't have the money that Sullivan has. Sullivan has, I want to say he has $4 million. Oh yeah. It actually says it right here in the article. He has $4.8 million cash on hand. She has 48,000. So she's got 1% of that. So, we'll see. We'll see. Now, interestingly enough, also, Sullivan, his campaign announced endorsements from 16 Alaska Native leaders, including several of them at the helm of top Native corporations, like Rex Rock Sr. from the Arctic Slope Regional Corp. So we'll see how that affects what's going on with Peltola as well. It will be. It's going to be interesting to see. Like I said earlier, this is going to be an exciting election season, and there's going to be so much money flying around, both from the candidates, and of course you've got the ranked choice voting repeal coming up, and so there'll be outside money, inside money, dark money, light money. It'll be. I mean, as a radio station guy, I'm kind of excited about that. But at the same time, you folks are all going to be sick of all the, and it's going to, I guarantee you, it's going to start early. Like I said, they started doing the anti-Dan stuff. I mean, months ago. So we'll see where it goes from here. But, buckle up, Buttercup, is what I'm saying. Buckle up. It's going to be an exciting ride for this year. Not to mention that we are about 1 week away from the start of the session, the legislative session. Ooh, Nelly. Ooh. Going to be exciting. All right. We got to go. We will see you guys tomorrow, The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good day. Be kind, love one another, live well. Okay, my friends. Well, thanks for coming in. It's a fun morning. It's gonna be a good time. I'm looking forward to it. We will see you guys. I'm going to try and take a nap in a little bit. 4 hours of sleep is just not enough for this old man. All right, guys, we will catch you later. All right, be kind, love one another, live well. We'll see you then. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.